Okay, everyone. It's been quite a while since I did my last update. I think it was about a year. Yeah, lots have been going on. I don't really know where I'm going to go with this one today, but I'll just kick off on one topic that's come to mind today, and then we'll see where it goes. So, just in Cambridge, just going to walk over to the Cambridge Business Park. It's really quiet over there, and enjoy its corporate landscaped beauty. Yeah, so today I decided to contact Tesco because a company called Arla Foods that makes a lot of dairy products for Tesco has introduced or some of its farmers are putting this compound into or giving it to their animals, cattle to be more specific. It's called Bovaer, Bovaer. That's its brand name. It is a drug. You can look it up on Wikipedia. And apparently, get this, right? I kid you not. This is used to stop the cows farting. I'm just going to pause a minute while you just get your head around that, and I'm just going to cross the road. Woohoo! Yes, folks, cow farts. That's the opening part of this chat here today. But I mean, I don't know how much more ridiculous things have to get. I really don't. And with this whole net zero thing, I mean, it's clear to me anyway that only one side of the debate is covered, which is the very nature of propaganda. And I've put this in my I'll put details in my posts on LinkedIn, so you can check those out. Some alternative scientific points of view, like the co-founder of Greenpeace, who is dead against this theory that CO2 is causing the planet to warm up. Also, like Professor David Bellamy, who I used to think was fantastic when I was growing up. Always walks and minerals. Alright, I'll stop trying to do impressions of Professor Bellamy. But yeah, he got kicked off the BBC because he wouldn't toe the line. I think I might have mentioned this before. And a bit like Jeremy Clarkson, apparently the real reason for him not doing any more of that car show, what was it, Top Gear, not that I was a fan, but the real reason he's not doing it anymore is because he doesn't like electric vehicles. So that's what happens, you see. If you don't toe the line, then you get booted off. You get booted off the platforms. So obviously that's the mainstream media, but you can see that in the new mainstream media, which is Google, X, YouTube, and the same thing happens there. I'm just going to go over this area here. So back to cow farts. Over. So that's the ridiculous point we're at now, where money is being invested, and God knows how much it costs to develop this drug that they're giving to the cows to stop their methane production or whatever. And but the thing is, it's all complete nonsense. But this is the very nature of an inversion. So I'm going to introduce a concept here, and it's called an inversion, which means it's like everything. Not everything, but the concept of the inversion is it's upside down. So if something's in an inverted state, then the opposite is true. And this is a very common way that's used to control people and to put concepts out there. So I believe it was one of the senior members of the SS, as in the German SS, that said that if you're going to lie, you want a really, really, really big lie, and then what you do for propaganda is you just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it over and over again. And then what happens with human beings is it gets stuck in their minds, and they get programmed just like a computer. So once the brain has heard something 21 times, it becomes a program, and it doesn't really matter about evidence and things like that. It's just accepted as reality, and that's how this brainwashing works, basically. So, for instance, with they used to call it global warming, then they called it climate change, and it used to be. Oh, actually, I think they started with the CFCs, and it was a hole in the ozone, now it's, I don't know, net zero, whatever they've expanded it to be. That like we need to completely stop producing CO2 and keep it at a constant level. When it, so the way the brainwashing works is actually the opposite is true. So if you look at farming and look at greenhouses farmers use, they will either buy in CO2 or they'll burn some fuels that produce the CO2, so they can increase the concentration of CO2 in the greenhouses and therefore get a much better crop. So we need CO2 for the natural world. We need it for the trees and the plants and for those to thrive. And then obviously that's what we depend on, whether it's the animals people eat or the veg and fruit. So what they're actually doing, it's not even like it's sort of helping a little bit, because there's nothing wrong with efficiency, right? And of course that's a good idea, but cutting CO2 is actually doing the exact opposite for the planet that it needs. And the most ridiculous aspect of this I've just pointed out with the Bovair to reduce the cows farting. It's just honestly, it's just, I just can't believe people are taking this seriously. And some of it is funny like that, except that we don't know what that drug does to us. We don't know the effects of that. And this pharmaceutical industry is very good at producing lots of drugs, and then mysteriously people seem to be getting various illnesses that are unexplained, or at least no one's willing to look in the obvious places. People might quietly suspect it, but it's like, oh no, you're not allowed to question again the sort of model of the pharmaceutical industry. And this has been described as allopathic medicine. So I think I've mentioned this before in other talks, where it's basically treating the symptoms. And I don't think there's any arguments about this. Drugs don't cure anyone. They treat the symptoms or keep you alive. It's not about curing disease. That's not what the drugs are for. And you'll hear this when they say, if you're taking chemotherapy, it's just to fight cancer, or it's to, you take some painkillers, it's to kill the pain. It's not. It's just he's a postman. It's not to solve the problem, basically. It might solve it for a while. You don't have the pain. Maybe the cancer goes away for a while. But really, it's a upside down model of what the true situation is. And what the true situation is, your body is asking for you to deal with your emotions. And everything in this world and the system we live in is basically designed to suppress your emotions. So, and pharmaceuticals are part of that. They're used to suppress your emotions, basically, which is fine for a while, but then what happens is, the issues are going to get more and more serious, and you just have to deal with them. And you may have noticed that time is now, and there's a lot of these emotions are coming to the surface now, and if you don't deal with them, the options basically are to suppress them even more, which could be drink, drugs, alcohol. Drink is alcohol. Alcohol, drugs, pharmaceuticals. Then, or you can start to deal with your emotions and get to the reasons behind those emotions. Well, just clear the emotions really is the best thing, and then the insights will come to you. But it's actually working on the emotions is the most important thing. And I have mentioned this before in other talks. This is part of the reason why I didn't do a talk for a while, because really, I think what I said in my other two talks is I'm repeating myself a bit, but anyway, I just felt the urge to come for a nice little walk. So yeah, I've asked Tesco if they could let me know which products they have that have this Bovaer compound potentially in them, and to let me know. So I'm avoiding Arla Foods products, and their brands are things like Cravendale, Lurpak. They do actually put their logo on. You can see it's Arla Foods if you're looking around the shop. But I'm also wondering if Tesco uses it in any of their own brand products. So I've asked them for that information because they don't have to label this. Just like they don't have to tell you, they're putting antibiotics, or they're injecting cattle and fish with antibiotics. They don't have to tell you those either. So it's this. I actually think this whole cow fart thing might actually get people's attention, and the news that I watch, or the information I get, is more not the mainstream outlets where they're not going to talk about this type of thing. More generally, they don't talk about stuff. Some things will come through, but yeah, it's more my own groups that I'm in on Telegram, which is a sort of alternative resource for, dare I say, conspiracy theorists. I'm laughing because like conspiracy. So one of the things that happens, I mentioned this before as well, is that terms like conspiracy theorist is created by the intelligence services, like CIA in this instance, and then it's weaponized, so it's used against people who don't comply with the mainstream narrative, and they label them conspiracy theorists. But I saw something in one of the groups recently. I thought, this is a really good point. Why don't they just call conspiracy theorists liars? Have a think about it, and have a look at this fountain while you think about it. Surely if we're lying, just call us liars. Just come right out with it. But for some reason, they like to use the term conspiracy theorists. So it's almost like, it's just one of those conspiracy theorists, another crazy idea. Yeah, you don't want to be with that crowd. You just stick with us. We're everything's great. You're in the sort of mainstream crowd, not like one of those fringe conspiracy theorists. And they do this with other terms as well. Like they say, like, another good one I've heard is vaccine denier. Again, what does that mean? Vaccine denier. Does it mean a group of people that all share the same view about that vaccines don't work, or that they're toxic, or that is it, what does that actually mean? Again, it's not really important what it means. It's just a way of like a psychological tool of weaponizing a term and lumping a load of people together and go, oh yeah, they're just the crazy vaccine deniers. How can the system possibly be the way it is? And someone would have noticed this by now. There's so many clever people. I'm in Cambridge here, and there's AstraZeneca over there, there's Amgen, there's all these companies. Someone would have noticed, wouldn't they? If this system was vaccines didn't work, or they caused autism or other problems, someone would have noticed by now. So yeah, they're just these crazy deniers, vaccine deniers. And it's like, oh, okay. But like I said, the way the propaganda works is you create a massive lie that's completely the opposite of what the real situation is. So what if the real situation is, well, your body expresses illness or dis-ease when you have an imbalance, and it could be an emotional imbalance. I mean, it could be you're also eating the wrong foods or something, or but let's just say an emotional imbalance. But like I said, the system doesn't want anyone to look at their emotions. Emotions are bad. You're not supposed to get angry. You're not supposed to express your emotions. And I've covered this before as well. The corporate world seems to be about, suppress your emotions. Take the emotion out of it. That's the phrase they use. Take the emotion out of it. So yes, it's a weaponized term. Vaccine denier, love it. How loaded is that term? A group of people, anyone who doesn't agree with that particular mode of, modality of allopathic medicine is just all lumped together in one group, and they're all vaccine deniers. Whereas, from my research, there's a lot of doctors and a lot of medical researchers that don't agree, and that have uncovered big problems with the with the evidence that backs up vaccinations, for instance. But what tends to happen is it's like a self-suppression mechanism. So yeah, they will be suppressed, but also just the general belief out there is that vaccines are really good and they're helpful. So the majority of people will suppress the others that don't share that perspective, and the group that maybe doesn't share that perspective is actually nuanced. So there's people in that group who will have all sorts of different views. I've got my views about what I feel works and is the best modalities. I've already shared that I don't think pharmaceuticals are one of them. I think they're completely counterproductive. But for me, I use color mirrors. So I'm a teacher of color mirrors, and that's colormirrors.com if you want to check out their website. I also use EFT a lot, which is emotional freedom technique, or tapping, which I think is really effective as well. From my own experience and over 15 plus years of working on myself and helping others, more recently helping others. And then actually a really good technique that I've been using and learning the last couple of years is something called access bars, which is it's a bit like Reiki, if you've heard of that. You sort of hands-on healing, and it helps move the energies through the body, and sometimes you can get stuck energies in your body, and this is really, really good, I've found. But there's all sorts of modalities. Some people like homeopathy, some people like acupuncture, some people do all healing with crystals, I don't know. All sorts of different things and options are out there. And then because none of those things are scientific, quote scientific, people will be lumped together with some sort of derogatory term like vaccine denier or something, when that's not the case at all. You know, I would say it's a very diverse group of people that have just realised for their own reasons that there are better approaches. I mean, I've got so many examples. I can think of one example of someone I know very well, and she had terrible menstrual problems, like unbelievable crippling menstrual problems, and she's a scientist. She's got a chemistry degree and very intelligent, and you know, the drugs weren't working, so she tried homeopathy, and it solved the problem. And I remember, like, I was very skeptical at the time, and I remember saying to her, like, oh, you know, well, that is just mumbo jumbo and all this stuff, you know. And she's like, yeah, but it worked for me. Nothing else worked. And eventually, because I didn't used to buy into all of this sort of stuff, eventually I was like, you know what, maybe she's got a point here. I mean, it managed to get through my thick skull and my thick layers of egos that was saying, like, oh, you know, no, it's just nonsense, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, hang a minute. She's got a chemistry degree, so which took her 4 years at a good university. She's then she solved what for her was a really, really serious issue around menstruation problems and pain, a lot of pain, with homeopathy, and then she went and became a homeopath, which takes years and years as well. I think it takes 7 years to become a homeopath, or maybe 4 years, but it's a massive investment of time. So, like, you know, why would I remember all those years ago thinking, you know, even getting through my thick skull, going, why? It doesn't quite make sense. If someone's really intelligent and they're a scientist, and then they've come to this realization, perhaps there's something in it. Perhaps, you know, even though I really think I'm right about this, or you really used to think I was right about it, perhaps there is something in it. I mean, maybe I should just look into it. And then that was a really big start of me waking up about a whole load of stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's just one example. But a lot of people come to what get labeled as alternative healing modalities because the mainstream stuff isn't working for them, and they've got to have a solution, otherwise their lives are just going to be unbearable. And I've seen quite a few of other examples where people's lives are unbearable and they're taking very, very strong drugs for things like lupus and you know, debilitating drugs, and someone who's an only, you know, young woman taking debilitating drugs to try and keep this condition at bay, and basically suppressing emotions. But you know, that's obviously, they don't even think about that. But you know, so it's, I don't know, it seems to me that where was I going with this? Oh yeah, I was talking about labels. It seems to me that these labels are used and weaponized to tar everyone with the same brush, when actually it's a nuanced picture, and there's many different modalities. People do all sorts of different things. Actually, yeah, like another person, someone else who helped really wake me up a long time ago when I was living in the States, Dave Asprey, actually, I'll just mention his name because he's a public figure, and he does he's like expert on diet and nutrition and exercise, and he's sort of gone down that route. So again, it's quite different to what I do. I mean, stuff I do is nothing to do with diet and exercise, it's to do with energy healing. But you know, he was the one who woke me up about stuff like aspartame, and I remember him telling me, like, I remember like having this Diet Coke. I used to drink the Diet Coke and Diet Sprite and all this stuff when I lived in the States. I remember walking around this shopping mall, and I was really fit and everything. I was like, used to go running all the time, and I had like whatever it was, like a 500 milliliter. They wouldn't call it that over there though. So many ounces. Like a 500 ml bottle of Diet Coke, in the shopping mall, and I drank it, and I felt like going, ooh. Just checking no one's around while I do my little ooh impression. I felt my whole world started to spin, and I was like, what's going on? And then I felt so dizzy. And then I mentioned it to Dave in the office the next week, and he was like, oh, you know, they put aspartame in that. And he's showing me and I just, you know, you can just search it online, and you can see the details. And it turns out this stuff was approved by the CDC, which, I mean, I jokingly call it the Centre for Disease Creation, but I think it's really the Centre for Disease Control. But yeah, the CDC approved it, and but it was as a sweetener. It's used in loads and loads of stuff now as a sweetener. Approved by the CDC, but there was like it had to be pushed through the approval because some of the scientists didn't agree. But our friend Donald Rumsfeld, remember that name, of 9/11 fame and attacking all the Middle East fame. He was former CEO of a drugs company called Searle, Searle, and they, I think they had the patent on it at the time, or it was in his interest, financial interest, to get it passed. So he pushed it through, even though there was some, I think it was Italian scientists that had done some research and found that it caused tumours in the mice. So this got pushed through, and now everyone just accepts, well, not everyone. People like Dave Asprey don't accept it safe. I don't accept it safe. And many people who sort of, I would say, were independent thinkers avoid this stuff like the plague. You know, but because it was approved by the CDC, then the rest of the world just says, oh, okay, well, if it's good enough for the American CDC, it's good enough for us. And then it just gets rolled out. And, you know, I just think it's insidious, because you look at, there's brands like Robinson's in the UK, which is a sort of, they make like a fruit juice cordial. And when I was a kid, we used to have it, and that's, you know, it's for children generally. So they put it in stuff like that, which I just find really a bit sad, really, because it's children can't make those decisions. I mean, you know, and it's this neurotoxin, which is aspartame, is put into these products, and it especially affects the youngsters and children and babies. You know, and they've been giving this chemical that is known to cause cancer and cause severe neurological problems. I mean, of course, they only put a little bit in, so it takes years and years and years for the effects to come about. But you can see the effects now. You can see the raising cancer rates. I'm not saying it's all from aspartame. There's many different environmental factors, you know, toxins in the environment that contribute to those problems. And if, you know, and these research organizations like Cancer Research, all they do is look for drugs to solve the problem again, because that seems to be the answer, isn't it? If you've got a problem, take a pill. And on the food aspect here, you know, if you're overweight or you're unhappy with your body weight, you know, is it Ozempic? And you can take a pill for that, rather than looking at your diet and looking at reading the labels and looking what's in the food. And, you know, no, don't do that. Just take a magic pill to solve the problem. And there's a magic pill for everything. But like I say, the alternative view to the allopathic medicine is those pills are not solving the problem at all, and they're making things a lot worse. And I think we can see that, the evidence for that, if you just look around you in society and look what's happening. Look at the obesity rates in the United States, for instance, and look at how much is spent on healthcare, so-called healthcare, and how much, and it just keeps going up and up and up and up. So, you know, to me the link is obvious, but then that's because I'm willing to accept and consider lots of different points of view and not just what is in the mainstream media. So yeah, I mean, I've been talking about food there and aspartame. I do think it is the number one thing to cut out. If you're going to remove one product, one toxin from your life, I think aspartame has got to be the number one. Another one is, I'm probably going to get shot down for all of this, but what the hell? Welcome to my life. Another one is fluoride, specifically sodium fluoride. I'm not talking about any natural fluoride compounds that you find out in nature and that might be in mineral water or something. I'm talking about sodium fluoride, which is waste from the aluminium processing industry. And again, they've put that into toothpaste. Not that I use fluoride toothpaste. I haven't used fluoride toothpaste for years, decade maybe more. Again, I've looked into this and researched this a lot, and I don't just read stuff. I go and talk to people. I remember being on this flight to India to go and see my insane mate Simon, who had a bar out in Goa, and I remember sitting on the flight, on this Thomas Cook flight, next to this guy, and Indian guy, and he's a dentist, and I was chatting away to him, and I don't know, back in the day I was more vocal about my thoughts, and he said he was a dentist, and I think he was going back home to see some of his family or something. So I was like, oh great, and I was asking him, I thought, well, what do you think about fluoride? And he's like, well, when he was at university, he questioned it, and after a bit of discussion with him, he was like, yeah, I don't think the case is proven, and I did question it when I was at uni, but you're just told no, it's you're not allowed to go there, and you're not going to get your pass and get marked. You get marked and get your degree and be accepted into the profession if you're a crazy conspiracy theorist who thinks that fluoride is toxic. What, are you insane? Again, it's like this inversion of something that is highly toxic, but they've managed to brainwash people into thinking that it's good for your teeth. I mean, I think my teeth are pretty good, right? I'm 51. Sorry, 50. Don't get ahead of yourself, Stephen. 50. And my teeth are pretty good. I've got some crowns, but no real issues. And I haven't been using fluoride for years. So fluoride is a neurotoxin, and it dumbs people down. It was used by the Nazis. They used to put it in the water to make the people more docile and easier to control. More docile and easier to control. Wonder if that's relevant to today's world. More docile, easier to control. Just doing what you're told, not questioning anything, just going with the mainstream narrative. It's the red team or the blue team. Let's not worry about the people who are really controlling things, the banks, or we could also just call it the government, because the banks are the government. Let's not look too much into that. Just vote Labour and they're going to make things better, aren't they? Obviously we see that they haven't, and they're like, well, I'm sort of going off on a bit of a tangent here, but it's like, oh well, how can we possibly balance the budget? We're in all this debt, and we need to raise more taxes, and that's the only option. We've got to raise taxes. Oh, you're not allowed to question the system. No. No, you're not allowed to look at that. It's just, look, this bit of paper says, well, it's my hand, but imagine it's a bit of paper. This bit of paper says that, you know, we're 160 billion in this hole and we need to raise more taxes. And, you know, just so happens we're going to raise the taxes on the poorest people in society, like by subsidising wind power and doubling the electricity price. And the UK has the most expensive electricity in the world by a long way, and massive subsidies are given to these companies that produce the wind turbines, and they're chopping down trees to put them there. So how is that good for their supposed aims of reducing CO2? Because the trees were quite happily capturing the CO2 and making wood out of it. And now they're all chopped down, or not all of them, but vast swathes of them in Scotland are chopped down, and you know, and then they're putting these turbines up and taxing the poorest people to pay for that. Meanwhile, and that, look, this is going to be controversial, and you might be thinking, well, this is not what I learned at university. But I'm telling you, I've done 3 years of intense research into this, about how the banking system works. And I've got evidence, irrefutable evidence, from the Bank of England, from Professor Richard Werner, who's an expert economist who came up with the term quantitative easing, from Sir Mervyn King, former governor of the Bank of England. You know, they make it very, very clear how the banking system works, but people don't want to accept it. It's too simple. It's like, oh no, we've got to have all these theories about, is it Keynesian economics, or is it some other type of economics, and should we, you know, have this type of monetary cycle, and all this nonsense, basically, all this, you know, overcomplicated nonsense. When what basically happens is 97% of the currency is created by the banks when they issue loans. And you're thinking, well, how does that work then? When you take out a loan, you sign on the dotted line, or electronically sign on the dotted line, and the bank monetizes that. It just create money out of it. And you go, well, how does that work then? Well, it's all underpinned by the law, and there's the Bills of Exchange Act you could look into. It's all in there. Because when you sign on the dotted line, it's a promissory note, so you're promising to pay. So it's a debt, basically. So you sign on the dotted line, you've created a financial instrument which the bank takes, immediately converts into cash by just pressing a button on, well, automatically converting it into cash in their computer system, and then adding it onto their balance sheet without telling you that, of course. They tell you that they've loaned you money that savers have deposited, which is not true. I mean, in a sort of very twisted way, it's true, which is how these people justify it. Is because when you, I mean, this might screw with your mind here, but you might need to go back and listen to this bit again. But basically, when you hand over a promissory note, you are making a deposit at the bank. You're depositing a security instrument. So technically speaking, the bank is loaning you its depositors' funds, i.e. your funds. So you hand over a promissory note, it's signed with an interest rate on it or whatever. It's called, I think they might call it a mortgage deed, they might call it a loan agreement, or essentially the bit of paper you sign that says how much you owe. They take that, immediately put the full value of that note, and create the cash, and then, you know, they create it digitally, and then they I don't want to use the right word here, it's not transfer, because the money hasn't gone anywhere, it's just created out of nothing, and then they make you liable to repay it to them, even though it's your money. So basically, you deposit the promissory note, the bank turns it into money, they give you the cash back, start charging you interest on it. They've done nothing, and they've managed to say, at a push of a button, immediately create 100k and then loan it back to you with interest. Now, that is also how the central banks work, but most of the money creation is through the, these private banks, if you like, the retail banks. And so I'm not going to talk about central banking now. This is just the point I'm making is that 97% of the money supply is created in this way, and the banks create it without having any skin in the game whatsoever. They just fraudulently stealing your promissory notes, security instruments, turning it into money, making you pay them back the money that is yours, and charging you interest on it. And if you don't pay, then they send the boys round, the courts will just rubber stamp it, and they'll take your house off you. And another thing, the banks do all sorts of things after just that. This is the basic level of information I'm giving you here. They also do things like securitization, which is they sell the note on as well, on the markets, and they can make more money out of it like that. So there's a really good presentation by a guy called allegedly Dave, and I've posted that on my LinkedIn post, but he goes into the full details of how all of this process works. And I attended his lecture, and I went through all of the materials. I read the papers from the Bank of England, from where they basically tell you all of this. If you want to find out the information, it's there, but people don't believe it because they're brainwashed and think that it works a different way. It doesn't work a different way. This is how it works. So the banks can create money out of thin air. They have you on the hook to pay it back with interest, even though you created it. Meanwhile, how do you earn money? Well, you've got to go to work and use, your time and effort to create, to earn these digital credits, pounds, that the bank just creates out of thin air, and then you've got to pay them back. You've got to pay your supposed loan back with interest. And you've got to go to work. So, at first glance, to anyone who hasn't, if you were an alien coming down and just landing on this planet, and someone had just told you, if I'd told you this story, you might say that was slavery. And then we go back to, well, there's this massive budget deficit, or how are we going to pay for the doctors and nurses, and it's terrible. We have to raise taxes. What? And I saw Jeremy Clarkson being interviewed by the BBC, and they were saying to him, well, you're trying to get out of paying taxes and by living in the Isle of Man or whatever else he's doing, and what about the doctors and nurses? We need to pay for them. And it's like, yeah, but this is the thing. See, they don't ask the right questions. They're never ever gonna go down this line that I'm talking about. You will never ever ever see anything about what I've just said about how banking works in the mainstream media. And Professor Werner, his interview is actually, it's still on YouTube. He's interviewed on RT, which is a Russian propaganda channel. But yeah, he was interviewed on there, and some other outlets. He's quite a famous guy, but you will never see him on the BBC. You will never see him on any establishment media. And they are letting certain things through now about COVID and various other stuff, because they have to. It's damage limitation. Otherwise, people are going to start kicking off, which they might do anyway, but they've got to try and keep things under wraps for as long as possible while they create another crisis to distract people from what's gone before, which is another one of their tactics. So yeah, if the country's running out of money, supposedly, and the bank's creating 97% of the currency out of thin air, why couldn't if the government is the government, why don't they take some of those powers and create money out of thin air and use it to pay for the, you know, the doctors and nurses or whatever else they need to pay for, because the government is basically run by the banks and they control the whole country. And you know, the illusion of choice you have is an illusion. And I think people might be starting to realize that now with the whole Keir Starmer thing and how unpopular he is. And you know, voting in a Tory government or Reform or whoever these people are, it's not going to make any difference, because they're not asking the right questions. They will never ever talk about what I've just talked about. Because if people realized how money works, and I think it was Henry Ford said this, is quite a famous quote, there'd be a revolution in the morning if people realized how the banking system works. You know, all hell would break loose. But it's just, they're so clever with the way they've control the narrative. It's controlling people's minds. It's mind control. You know, what you're allowed to think about is what is put on the news. And those are the things that we're allowed to debate. And that's how they do it. And, you know, I used to do it. You go in the office and it's like, oh, you know, this happened in the news and blah blah, Brexit this or something else that, and it's whatever they've put. They've got people's minds captured to think about what the topics are that they're being given in the news, or you know, when they go to work and they're told, oh, you know, ESG, that's a thing we've all got to do because, you know, that's a thing that the banks are pushing down from the top as one of their policies, you know, for whatever reason, to control people more and you know, capture more of the real assets using their fake money. I mean, just one other thing to say on the banking system, which again might be mind-blowing. I did try and explain this to my mother and she said, oh, my mind's in bits. But I mean, I did my best. So I think I spent about half an hour going over it. But that is called cognitive dissonance. When someone gives you an idea, like a lot of this discussion I've been doing this, when someone talks about something and gives you an idea that goes against everything you've known to be true your entire life, your brain just goes, nah, I'm not having this. No way, la 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 la. Or it might, and I was making progress with my mum. She was definitely getting it, and then it was like you could see at the end of it, it's like, I just can't deal with this, it's too much. I just can't go there. So I think I have like upped it a little bit on this talk, and I have been a bit more controversial. I think my previous talks I was more gentle, but you know, I think it's sort of upping the level of information, and then those that are able to even just be with it, even if you don't agree with what I'm saying, or it's just being able to have that thought and to entertain another idea, another concept, without dismissing it, as well as maybe, you know, you've got your existing belief system and your existing concepts, and then it's having this new idea, or what seems to be, you know, new idea to you, but I mean, not a new idea. So, you know, so it's cognitive dissonance, right? So anyway, this is what I wanted to say. And I did have a court case recently. I won't go into the details, but I did give this in a witness. I did mention this in a witness statement. I said, well, look, a £20 note, Bank of England £20 note, is a promise to pay. It is not actual payment. And you're like, what? What are you talking about? £20 note? It's money, isn't it? It's a bit, you know. Okay, it might be digital and stuff, but it's money. It's £20, isn't it? Well, if you actually look at the note and look what it says on it, it says, or words something like this: I promise to pay the bearer the sum of £20. So guess what? That's one of those promissory notes I mentioned, like where you sign on the dotted line for your mortgage or for your car loan or credit cards, the same things, any loan. It's a promissory note. It's a promise to pay. So you can create them, I could write you a promissory note and say, I promise to pay you 500 quid, sign it, and then legally you've got you've got a promissory note now that you can enforce as per the Bills of Exchange Act, and I've got to pay you. And if I haven't put a payment schedule on it, it's payable on demand, because the £20 note is payable on demand, or so it would seem, because it's a promise to pay. A £20 note is not £20, it's a promise to pay £20. A loan agreement, a promissory note, is a promise to pay the 100 grand. It is not 100 grand. The bank takes a promissory note, immediately monetizes it, that means turns it into cash straight away in their bank, and lends it back to you. You've created the bank 100k through your magic signature. I know it sounds crazy, but the law is there to explain how it works. The Bills of Exchange Act, look at the promissory note section, legislation.gov.uk, something like that. And the Bank of England notes, digital or otherwise, work the same way. So they're promises to pay, they're not actual payment, because pound sterling is called sterling because it used to be exchangeable for silver, sterling silver. But our friend Tricky Dicky Nixon, President Nixon, took the dollar off the gold standard in the 70s, which meant that you couldn't use the US dollar, which Federal Reserve notes actually. It's a private bank called the Federal Reserve, but just shorthand people say US dollars. You can no longer, since Tricky Dicky did that in the 70s, you can no longer take your US dollars to the Federal Reserve and get them exchanged for gold. They're promises to pay, you see. So the idea is you have a receipt for gold, and then you go to the bank and say, oh, can I have my gold back, please? But Tricky Dicky removed that. So there's no redemption value on those notes. So they're worthless, basically. It's only the worth that we give them. So this is like the key point to get. So you can pay with promissory notes. You could take a promissory note and pay off a debt with it, because you're paying a debt with another debt, basically. But that's all there is in the system. There's only debt. Again, this is another, which is where your brain might be going a bit nuts at this point. But there is no real money. There is only debt. There's only promissory notes. There's only promises to pay. There's no way of actually paying. How can you pay? You know, your bank says, oh, well, you need to pay us in, we want to be paid in pounds. It's like, well, what do you mean, the imaginary pounds that you created from my promissory note? Or do you mean the Bank of England pounds, which the retail banks or the building societies treat exactly the same way? As far as they're concerned, it doesn't make any difference to them if you deposit a promissory note worth 100k immediately to them in cash, plus all the repayments you're going to make as well, or if you pay with Bank of England promissory notes, which the Bank of England issued. So the Bank of England can issue them and you can issue them, but 97% of the currency in circulation is issued by you, not the Bank of England. And that is the biggest scam out there, because all of that currency, all of the wealth, this is how the banks are so rich, how they make so much money, how they make these incredible bonuses, because they've got us all slaving away, working in jobs to earn Bank of England promissory notes, and if we don't pay, they take our homes off us, and you know, if we want to have a home, they've got the stranglehold on it. I mean, look at all the conditions they put. They they do all these checks on you and make it's really official, but you're lending them the money. You're creating the money and giving it to them, and then then they take it off you and hand it back to you with as a loan, and then with charging interest on it. So I mean, there's reports that were done after the last crash in 2008, and there's a one called the Carmel Butler report that was delivered to the Treasury Select Committee in the UK. It's actually can be used in court. This guy called Carmel Butler used to work in the industry, and he's explaining some of these things that I'm talking about. And there's other ways it's a whole elaborate fraud system they've got. I mean, I'm just giving you the tip of the iceberg here, but you know, this was all reported after the last crash in 2008, and one of the conclusions of this select committee was, well, you know, the banks and the Bank of England also has this in a report, that the banks were allowed to create too much credit, and this is what caused the crash. But what that means in plain English is, you know, this system, the banks can just create unlimited amounts of money or debt, right? Because it's not real money, it's all IOUs, it's all debt that has to be paid back by us, the slaves. So in the last crash, you know, the banks created all this currency basically. People, I think, like people getting car loans and properties who had no chance of ever paying it back. I mean, the question here, I would say, is why should they have to pay it back? What a ludicrous system that puts all of the benefits with the bank, and then we have to like beg them to basically hand over money that we create. I mean, it can't get much more insane than this, can it? Apart from cow farts, of course, and trying to stop cows farting with drugs. Well, that sort of takes me to the start of this talk, really, where I was mentioning that. And yeah, I mean, I think if we want to understand where all the wealth has gone and why the country's skinned, it's because we're now at this massive money printing phase where see, the way the system works is it's like it is always an expansion of debt. You can never ever pay this debt down because the interest isn't put into the system. So to pay the interest, you have to take out more debt, and then, you know, it's a Ponzi scheme basically. It's a massive Ponzi scheme, and those that benefit are the bankers and those that control the governments behind the scenes. You know, don't take my word for that. There's plenty of research. If you just do some digging, there's plenty of people that talk about that. I mentioned Henry Ford, you know, not an insignificant industrialist. But you know, even like I say, the Bank of England's own report, Professor Richard Werner, expert PhD, Cambridge PhD economist, came up with the term quantitative easing. Sir Mervyn King, lots of other central bank governors just explain it exactly how the system works. But the public's not, just through the mainstream media and through brainwashing in universities and economics courses, they're just blinded from the truth that is right in front of them, and that is that cow farts are not a problem. And that is, you know, the bankers are taking all the wealth in this like crazy scheme that they've devised over a long period of time. They've been doing it, but you know, now we're coming to the next great reset, as Klaus, insert word, Schwab, talks about in the World Economic Forum. And his great reset is this financial reset where, you know, you know, he wants to bring in a new, you know, his masters, not him obviously, but his masters want to bring in a new system, probably using cryptocurrency or something. But you know, I'm very optimistic about the future, because I know that the real great reset is a spiritual great reset, and there's nothing they can do to stop that. And the more they fight against it and the more they try and control, the more they will lose control. And it's a bit like Star Wars and the Empire Strikes Back, or oh no, actually might be Star Wars. I think it was Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia, was saying to Governor Tarkin, like, you know, the more you try and grasp the star systems and control them, the more they will slip through your fingers. And that's exactly the case here. But you know, if if you're not in touch with your own spirituality and you're just in the sort of 3D world, should we call it, it you know it must be tough, because there is nothing to it might seem there's no hope, or it might seem the only answer is what is being said on the news, and we need to pay more taxes and all of this stuff. But this is just like I mentioned in other talks, the Matrix. You can come out of the Matrix if you want, but you don't have to. It's a free will universe, so we can choose whatever we want to do. And the Matrix, if you like, the control system, is very good at persuading us that but we should just stay within its boundaries and do what we're told and pay our taxes and blah blah blah. I sound like a bit of a quote from the movie now, but there is another way, and this is why it's called an awakening, a great awakening, which is happening right now. You may not realize it, but this is a great awakening, where the human beings on this planet start to realize that they're more than just human beings, and that they're very much spiritual beings, and and that, my friends, is a whole nother topic. So I think I'm going to leave it there. And it's a beautiful evening in Cambridge, and yeah, I'll say good evening to you, and hopefully I won't leave it. Maybe you want me to leave it forever before I do another podcast, but my intention is to do them more frequently, and I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas if I don't do a podcast before then. And yeah, I will be in touch. Goodbye.